we've now gone about a month
Yeah.
since the budget was supposed to be passed. And not a whole lot has really happened in this last month. There has been some denials of not having a budget done, having a budget done, but
a lot of finger pointing, and but yet nobody's coming back to actually do their job.
Right, and it seems the press has finally realized, hey, there's no budget here. We need to get these folks back in here and put a little pressure on them. What have you been up to? How have you been taking this, and how are you processing this as we're moving through it?
Well, I mean, I've called on Speaker McClinton and Leader Bradford to re-adjourn the House, bring us back into session, and let's get this budget finalized and get it done. I've gotten calls, and I've been communicating with our county commissioners, also with our different providers, and they're concerned. Our after-school programs are having to lay off people, and really for no reason. Obviously, the governor, reneged on his deal that he made with the Senate. The House leadership, the Democratic majority leader, said, "Oh, we have a budget done," but yet it's still sitting on the desk on the House floor, and I don't know where they're at. Now I'm hearing something about a listening tour, but really, what they need to do is come back to Harrisburg. And go back to the drawing board and get a budget that we can get passed and get signed so we can get these dollars out. We have a $5 billion budget surplus going into this budget. This is the first time in 12 years that the Democrats have been in charge of the State House, and they can't get a budget done with a $5 billion surplus.
That's kind of scary. And considering that there's a surplus, Democrats, of course, want to raid that surplus.
Yeah.
I want to put a quote out here from AP, a story that came out yesterday. Quote, Democratic lawmakers in Pennsylvania say that they are angry that millions of dollars to expand adult mental health services got cut out of the budget and are pushing to get it included now that the legislation is held up in a month-old partisan stalemate. Now, 2 points out of that. One, at least they're admitting the budget's not done.
Yeah.
And number two, I'm kind of confused personally about why they would be angry about this not being in the budget. Every House Democrat voted for this plan,
and that was one of the things that I brought up when I didn't vote for the budget. Was not only some of the raising taxes through Reggie. They cut $170 million on intellectual disabilities and autism services. They cut $125 million out of level up funding for the schools that need the funding the most. And then they ignored this $100 million, which was set aside for adult behavioral health. And we had set this aside in last year's budget. The money's already sitting here. It's got to just get driven out. We worked on compromise legislation when we passed this earlier in session. And then the Democrats, every single one of them, turned their back on the folks that need those dollars and voted for a budget that didn't appropriate those funds that are sitting in the bank here in Harrisburg. So I think it's just disappointing, disingenuous. But these dollars are here. They should be driven out. We were focusing on making sure those dollars were going to go to investments in workforce because we know we have gaps and people can't find services because they don't have folks to staff those positions. The money was also going to be for infrastructure to create beds. There's people that need inpatient treatment and there's no beds available. So we had really deliberated over how these dollars are going to be spent. I thought we had a bipartisan agreement in the House, and then every single House Democrat voted against making sure those dollars were driven out.
And when you look at how budgets typically go, it seems like there's a lot of back and forth. The bill will often bounce back and forth between the House and Senate several times before it is hashed out. I wonder in this situation, did folks just not read the bill before they voted on it? What is it? Incompetence?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a lack of leadership is the biggest thing. The House majority leadership team, it just does not. They didn't get a budget passed. Now they're upset about $100 million, which they're the ones that cut it out. So I really don't know if everybody's on the same page. But it's disappointing. We have 13 million Pennsylvanians that are relying on us to get a budget done. And here we are, and they're complaining about something that they did.
They absolutely are complaining about something they did, but not only that, they're spinning their wheels, for lack of a better term, at getting back into Harrisburg. There's no reason that they couldn't come back right now other than the choices that they themselves have made.
Yeah.
One of those choices has to do with the numerical advantage that allows them the majority, and a little bit of a game is being played, if you will, to maintain that.
Yeah.
And it's preventing them from coming back and doing work, is it not?
Yeah, so there's 203 total members of the state house. The Democrats right now have had a 102 to 101 majority, and they've hung tight together. They vote as a block on every issue, and they had a resignation. Representative Anna Morato had resigned, so now it's 101 to 101, and that's not a reason to not come back and do your job. But they're fearful that they won't be able to push solely their agenda. I think most Pennsylvanians at this point realize that we have divided government. We have a Republican Senate. We have almost right now we have an even split in the state house, and we have a Democratic governor. We should be coming back and working on a compromise solution to get this budget done. But they don't want to bring us back. They're talking about waiting until the end of September. That's a month and a half into some of the school years from a lot of our school districts, and we're going to be holding all the funding here. And the money's here. Like we talked about, we have a surplus. It's ridiculous that they won't come back and get this budget done.
We hear about this possible listening tour that they're going to go on to figure out whether they want.
I think it was reported today that they want to go on a 4-city listening tour across the Commonwealth to discuss opportunity scholarships for those students, and actually that's what they voted. That's what held up the whole budget. Because
isn't that what this whole hang-up is over?
Yeah. So now they went, and I say, why don't we have a 1-city listening tour? Why don't they come back to Harrisburg and get the budget done rather than running around all over the state, costing the taxpayers even more money? Let's get this budget done before we go on any listening tours.
And finally, Representative, let's change topics a little bit here. We'll get away from only budget talk. Legislation that you have proposed deals with property taxes in this Commonwealth have always been a problem, but now we're dealing with inflation. When reassessments happen, property tax values are going to shoot up. People need to be protected from this. What is your legislation doing?
We're just seeing a housing boom right now, and housing prices are skyrocketing. So if you're selling your house, and that's a great thing. If you're buying a house, it's a very difficult time, pretty much across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So I put forth an amendment earlier on this session that would have allowed for a $1,000 rebate, property tax relief, similar to the property tax rent rebate program we have now, but at $1,000 for every homeowner. The Democrats, by 1 vote, tabled that amendment, wouldn't even let it come up for a vote. I just can't see how you can go back to your constituents in your district and vote and say, hey, I voted against giving you $1,000 off of your property taxes. Now I have an amendment that would expand a program where if you lived in your house for more than 10 years and a reassessment happened for no fault of your own, say you live in your house, you raised your children in your house, and maybe you're in your 80s, and these are like from real life scenarios that we've heard about, and your community has been built up. So maybe you lived on a lakefront, and now the home next to you sells for $300,000 or $500,000, and the next home, and now they do a reassessment, and guess what? Your humble house that you live in is now reassessed at maybe 300 or 400% more than what you paid for it 30 years ago.
And your property
taxes go from maybe $2,000 a year, they go as high as $9,000 or $10,000 a year. There's no cap on it. So right now in the city of Philadelphia and in the county of Allegheny, in the Constitution, this was passed years before I was ever in service, there's an exemption for long-term homeowners. I wanted to expand that and allow for every county to opt in to give that exemption to long-term homeowners so that senior citizens mainly would not be punished in any kind of reassessment. Just back up 1 second. I'm against spot assessments. I'm against reassessments. I'm against property taxes wholeheartedly and want to get that relief out. But
if we're going to have them, we got to have some sense in it.
Yeah, but this legislation would provide that relief, and by 1 vote, it was tabled by every single Democrat in the state house denied that for the residents that they represent. I couldn't imagine going back to the residents that I represent and say, hey, by the way, not only did I vote to not give you $1,000 in property tax relief on your primary residence, I also voted to make sure that when there's a reassessment, your property taxes could skyrocket through the roof. I don't really understand the lack of comprehension on that side of the aisle of the impact that property taxes has on residents in this Commonwealth.
And as you said, turned down by 1 vote, and as we noted, 1 less Democrat in the state house right now, a reason they're not going to come back and get this done.
Yeah.